You're listening to Win-Win, an entrepreneurial community with your host, Ben Wolf.
And welcome to a brand new season, a new theme of the Win-Win podcast with me, your host, Ben Wolf, although I do have a special role also as a guest and host. So I'm sitting in two seats as we try to not recommend for businesses to do more than necessary. But we're gonna be telling a story today. People have experience with bringing in an integrator, firing an integrator, bringing in a fractional integrator, bringing in a new long-term integrator, all the ups and downs. We're going to tell one story today of a real business that had an integrator, brought in a fractional integrator, happened to be me in this case, about 3 or 4 years ago. And what's their story? What's going on? What happened? What happened before? What happened during? What happened after? And so with that, people who are thinking of going this route can like really hear from another real business owner what's going on, not just marketing, not just, people messaging, but like, just like hear a real story. Every story is going to be different. There's going to be ups and downs, but we're going to tell a story today. And for that story, I want to introduce our guest today. First is Nathan Shea, who is the founder and CEO of SecureStrux, a cybersecurity firm that helps government agencies and their contractors, as well as traditional commercial businesses. He is SecureStrux was my client several years ago. I served as fractional COO when their COO, when one of their partners, when their integrator had left, and before they brought in a new full-time integrator. And you can learn more about them at SecureStrux, STRUX, SecureStrux.com. And Nate's been kind enough to share his story in the past on this podcast. So this is going to be a different angle on the story. And I'm also introducing William Stratton. He is a certified EOS implementer, a certified Colby consultant. He has been SecureStrux's EOS implementer for almost 5 years, about 5 years. You can learn more about him on the eosworldwide.com website. I'll put a link to that in the description, as well as SecureStrux's website in the description. But welcome, Nate. Welcome, Bill.
Thanks. Thank you, Bill.
Yeah.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Well, I again, really great to have you guys. I'd love to first start, before we start telling the story, if I could just get some context and a little bit of background for, a minute or two from each of you. Like, how'd you get to be where you are today, doing what you are today? What's a little background context for people? Maybe Bill, if you could start.
Sure. So I've been in manufacturing leadership roles for most of my career. And in 2016, 2014, I was recruited and hired to be the president and CEO of a manufacturer of home elevators. It was a turnaround situation. So I spent the first 2 years really just cutting the losses and turning it around and starting to build a leadership team. And I was also in Vistage at the time, which is peer group for CEOs. And I was introduced to EOS. Someone gave me a copy of the book, Get a Grip, which is the Fable version of Traction. That was in June of 2016, and it was like a light bulb went off. I said, we need this for our business. So I actually reached out to EOS Worldwide in that time frame, and they put me in touch with Hank O'Donnell, who's an expert EOS implementer in Philadelphia. He came into the 90-minute meeting, we hired him, and it was transformational for both my leadership team and the entire company, to the point where we actually went really, really deep in our level 10 meetings to get to the root cause of an issue that was holding us back in terms of our growth. And we ended up changing our business model. I had a very high, and we put a new division in place to support it. And I actually had built a very strong leadership team, to the point where once this is starting to flow, and we had on the journey with Hank for over 2 years, I went to the owners and said, you don't need me anymore. Cliff can do the job. Cliff can do a really good job running the business. He was my second in command. And so I gave him a few months notice, and they hired Cliff. And I wanted to do what Hank did. I wanted to do and provide the kind of value to business owners and leaderships and people like Nate and his team, to help them get everything they want out of their businesses, what we do as EOS implementers. So in September 2018, I left and went to boot camp and became an implementer. and haven't regretted it since. It's been the best career decision of my life.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Nate, tell us about you.
Sure. Started SecureStrux a little over 10 years ago. We just had our 10th year anniversary last year. My start was at the U.S. Army War College here in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, taking care of a lot of their engineering, and cybersecurity was just starting to get a little bit of, just starting to get a little hot in the DoD. It really wasn't a big, they called it information warfare prior, but it really didn't have any framework to it. After about a year or so at the War College, I started working for an agency called DISA, Defense Information Systems Agency, and that's where that's where I started to really learn about cybersecurity. So I was in that field for about 8 years before I decided to go off on my own and really support many of the same type of clients that we support now. Agencies, defense contractors, clear defense contractors, all around the cyber defense and compliance. And so that's who we support. When I met Bill, I think I might have had 10 companies, so very dense and and a lot of eggs, or not a lot of eggs in a basket. And so that was a little scary times, but since then we have about 75 active clients, and then clients that come back and forth back to us as well. So EOS has been a game changer for us. It was one of those things where somebody handed me the book Traction, and read that thing, and I was like, oh wow, this is what we need. Because I was clueless. I was an engineer. I was just, before I knew it, I had 20 employees, and I just had no idea how to run a business. Doing my best, working the day job, delivering to the clients, and by night running the business. And just when I read that book, I said, okay, we can start to work with this, and things started to fall in place. And we'll get into that a little bit more, but that's kind of our story. I'm located here in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Most of our work is not here in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, but I decided to start building a leadership team and our back office here for the most part. And we're scattered throughout the country, about 45 folks. And the team, again, mostly cybersecurity and defense. So that's us.
That's awesome. Well, Nate, if you don't mind, if I start with you a little bit,
Sure.
what was the story with, I guess, leading up to when I met you, or when Bill introduced me to you in around June of 2020. I think it was May, June 2020, something like that. And what was the story like before that? What was happening in the business? What was happening with the integrator seat? What was the story?
Yeah. So, I was desperate to hey, I need partners, and I need someone to just work beside me to, kind of encourage me along. And I didn't really think a whole lot about just bringing somebody in to run the company. I didn't put a whole lot of thought into it. Had someone that was, incredibly smart, knew the work. And we were all just trying to do our very best. And up until there was some frustration, after about a year or so, there started to be some kludginess and some frustration. I introduced Traction in EOS. I had somebody leave pretty much week 2. They said, yeah, I don't want to do EOS. This is, I don't want to be a big company. I want to stay this little boutique-y small company. I was like, well, I don't, it's not like it has to be one or the other. But so one of my key people moved on. The person at the time, the integrator, really didn't buy into it, unfortunately. And it probably went on for about a year or two. And eventually, COVID hit. And when COVID hit, a bunch of other circumstances took place as well, personally, for the person that was running as our integrator, and decided to move on, gave me a nice 3-month notice, which is very nice. And that's really where, and Bill had been in the picture as well, helping us with our quarterlies, and just being a coach as well for me. And so he was helping us along. I think there was some little bit of resentment maybe there, just that, telling me and this other Art, my integrator, really where we're failing or not, or we can do better.
Meaning
And,
resentment where you felt towards Bill in a way because of the message he was delivering.
and I was very much like, Bill, these are the, I brought Bill in because I really needed, sorry, Bill, I need that bad guy, in the room to like say, listen, guys, you said you were going to do this and you're not doing this. And, you made these commitments. And so it was nice to have somebody there to kind of have my back a little bit, because I'm, no excuses, but I'm conflict avoidance. And, I've gotten better at that, but back then it was like, man, it was really tough to be the bad guy all the time. And so it was nice to have Bill there to support me in those quarterlies and just also keep it moving along. So, so that's kind of, where you two came in. I had an integrator from that I think hit a ceiling to a degree, and then it wasn't 100% aligned for one reason or another. And then, some other personal things kicked in, and that's about when we started to pivot. So,
right. I know you reached out to me, Nate, directly. We had an appointment, I think, set up on a Friday.
Yeah.
And I think you were talking.
And I'm trying to figure out how we met. Did Bill introduce us, or how did that happen?
Well, it was sort of a double introduction, because you actually found me independently, maybe through my website.
Okay.
And then, or LinkedIn, I'm not sure. I don't remember. Yeah. And we had an appointment already on the calendar on a Friday, and you had a call with Bill that morning. And earlier that morning, the same day we were going to talk. And you told me when we talked that you would talk to Bill that morning, and he had said, "Oh, try reaching out to Ben Wolf's Edge, from Wolf's Edge." Yeah. And so it was, it was definitely Bill's introduction, but it was also, you found me independently.
Yeah.
But I'd like to hear from Bill, not just like going back earlier to that moment. Bill, working with Nate, working with SecureStrux, like, tell us about your perspective, your experience, what you remember about that, the integrator situation, and also just those events leading up to the, before the fractional integrator kicked in.
Sure. So Nate was my third client. This is like, I was just starting out as an implementer myself. And I look back on it now, the symptoms were there all along, and I just didn't push back. I probably
symptoms
would push,
meaning for the previous integrator.
For the weak integrator. Yeah. I would push you back even harder now, Nate, than I did then. Because your first quarterly, you guys only completed 29% of your company rocks, and 30%.
How many?
29%. And 30% of your total rocks. And then your second quarterly wasn't much better. You were at 50% company rocks and 38% total rocks. And then your annual, this is where you all got really frustrated with yourselves. I think that's when you started to change. Your annual, this is a year into the journey, you hit 14% of your company goals, 50% of your company rocks, and 15% of total rocks. And we were IDSing in that first annual. You guys, I think, basically, I think you recognized we had to do something different.
Yeah.
And I think that's where you were starting to say something's got to go. And that's when I think I remember, Nate, you took over as the integrator for a short period of time.
Probably did.
Temporary basis. And the very next quarterly, you did a good job as a bad guy, because the April quarterly in 2020, you were at 100% company rock completion and 83%.
Wow, that's a big difference.
So you guys just pivoted, and right when, as you mentioned, when COVID started.
Yeah.
And it was great to see.
Yeah.
And Bill, sorry, go ahead, Nate.
No, I said that's where Ben came in, because when that happened, when I got that notice, I was like, okay, well, I can only do this for so long, and I need some help.
And Bill, what made you think of, fractional as opposed to just look for another full-time at that moment? Like, what made you think of that? What made you think of Wolf's Edge?
So what made me think of you is, I don't know if we had met prior or not, Ben, but I knew you had a good reputation. I know that JBS or Jonathan Smith was your EOS implementer when you
Yeah,
were
when
running the
I was a
healthcare
client,
company.
he was
So
my
I
implementer.
knew you were trained by one of the best, and so that's why I thought of you.
Hmm. That's nice. Yeah, and you told me at the time that you were listening to my podcast.
Okay, then I was listening to your podcast.
I mean that also you told me, and at the time it had been about a year of doing it at the time, and I was thinking like, is anything coming from this? Is this accomplishing anything? And then I get that, and then I had the call with you, Bill, and when you told me, I was like, all right, maybe we'll keep doing this a little longer. And here we are 4 years later, but the so that's super interesting. Okay. And okay, so Nate, tell me if like from your perspective, like, okay, you know, Bill suggested this, you would reach out to me, maybe it came up in the quarterly, the concept, you know, tell me about that of like what was going on, like why were you looking for a fractional integrator? Like what were you hoping that it would accomplish? Like where was your head and
Yeah.
what happened at the time?
Yeah, so again, we were just a bunch of engineers just trying to make a paycheck, see what we can do with this company, started to get legs. But then I was like, I think I need somebody that's been trained or has been there, done that. And so I think I looked at a couple, landed with you, felt most comfortable with you, Ben, and just the need for someone to give me that bridge between the time that I, our integrator had moved on to hiring, a full-time integrator. And so I'm not sure how long we worked together. Maybe it was about 6 months
I think it
total.
was about six
Like that.
months. Yeah.
Yeah, and
And
the other
good, Bill.
the other thing I remember when we were going through this process, I mentioned to you that Ben really knows EOS, so he could show you and he could model it for your whole
Yeah.
team.
Yep.
Even as a temporary fractional
Yep.
integrator, he could model EOS and really take you to the next level.
And I just remember the struggle prior to you, Ben, of trying, like, I know EOS can be flexible, but I was like, let's just get it right for 3 months and then we can be flexible. Okay. And there was just this pushback of like, oh, this is kind of stupid. And, why do we have to do this at this tempo? Why does this L10 have to be this way? And why do we have to use... So you coming in and be like, this is how we're going to do it. And then when people were like starting to, squirrels and that kind of thing, you're like, bring them back in. We kept on time. You held people accountable. You were making phone calls with the team. It was, just added some rigor to our meetings and to the accountability, which
Right.
was very helpful. And then you helped me. I don't know if we want to get there yet, but you helped me find and vet. Both you did. The president that was with us for almost 3 years. So
Right. I remember the first day I worked with you guys, it was in person. I drove out to Lancaster
yeah.
and came out there in person. And I think your L10, I think your level 10 meeting, the weekly leadership team meeting, I believe was in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had like barely gotten there. I'd barely met, I hadn't even met, I think, some of the people on the leadership team. And rather than, I guess what I would normally want to do is like watch the L10, how it's currently going. So I have some basis of comparison of like what, so where we came from, where we're going. But I didn't do that. You were like, hey, Ben, why don't you just lead? So I was like, okay. And I just like completely cold, came in, just used your Asana. You were using Asana to manage your meetings. And I just came in cold and just led the meeting just because you know how to do it. Like, I don't need to know all the stories in the background to to go through your rocks, your measurables, your to-dos, facilitate issue solving. I mean, that's all stuff you can you could just do as long as you have the L10 agenda and what all the rocks etc are. Then you could just do that. So I just came in cold and just completely cold.
Yeah, it was all blurred to me, man. I'm telling you, there was just a lot going on. And I'm not sure if we were still like in that hybrid mode. Some people were calling in. Some people were, I'm not sure if everyone was there or not, but
there was one leadership team in particular. I remember a member in particular. I remember who I don't think was there. But then when we did most of them on Teams afterwards, I remember there was one person who had the person's camera was off, or it
Oh
was
yeah.
like where you could just see
Oh
the top of
yes.
the person's head.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
And
Oh
I'm sure that person was sort of annoyed by the fact that I was like, "Can you turn
yes, I
the
remember
camera
that. It's
down so I
always
can see
like,
your face?"
yeah, like yeah,
It was
from
like,
the
"No,
eyebrows
I
up.
just like the way my camera is. I can't help it."
Yeah.
Whatever. It's just, it just saw things that like, look, someone's less engaged. You can't see their face. They're just less engaged.
Yeah. Not
Um,
harder to build
and
trust and that kind of thing.
look, and sometimes that sort of thing is a matter of maturity or just like a matter of training. Like it's not like they really are trying to escape. They're just not been in a professional organization before, or like, they just grew up in it and they never had it modeled what like a professional team, even small and mid-sized business, but like what that looks like. And so sometimes people just need to learn. Like it's no big deal. Like, but others sometimes it is an effort to escape, to have the
Yeah.
camera off or,
Yeah, I didn't get ready.
top of the head, not be ready, be late.
Yeah.
Um, Now, would you mind sharing where you were at the time in terms of like your revenue, profit? Again, feel free to just not answer,
Sure.
but
No. Let's see.
team size, revenue, profit at that time.
You came in right after COVID, so it was 2020.
Yeah.
I think we were struggling as well. And I think that's where the frustration was coming in. It's like, okay, this was like my first year where I had not done better than the year before from a revenue standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we were at like $3.5 million then.
You were about 25 people. Is that
Yeah, between 20 and 25 people as well. I just bought a building, so we were starting to bring people into the Lancaster office, starting to hire there. So we might have 5 or 10 people in our office at that point, but it's still everyone pretty well remote. I don't think we made a profit that year either. So that added to the frustration of not really feeling aligned with
right?
my integrator, but also like, the results not being there. And then like Bill said, like every quarter was oh boy, what's this going to be like, and there's just a little bit of drama there too. Like when you're winning, when you're selling, when you're growing, it's so much easier to let some of this stuff, like, all right, whatever, plus it's fun. So it was a little bit of why isn't this working? And cybersecurity is big. It back in 2020, it was big. It's not like it is now where it's even, there's even the commercial world is like bought in. So I was just like, this is an industry that should be growing. So that's where we were from a revenue standpoint. That's where we were from a people standpoint. No, the profit wasn't there, or if it was like, it didn't happen. That was the year it didn't happen. Like I've
Mm-hmm.
always been profitable. I've always grown. Which, I know that it's not always a one-way trajectory, but it was at a point like, why are we not doing this? Like it's a hot industry, and we have great people. And the processes, part of it is just processes were so bad and so kludgy. And that's really part of that role, that integrator, I believe, is to, look for ways to streamline and get the right people in the right seats. And so that's where we were. When you and Bill had been working with us for a year,
Right.
but that's when you had come in then. And that's about 2020.
And so after that, during let's say during those 6 months at the beginning and during what, like from Nate, from your perspective, like what happened? What was the experience? Like what happened?
Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of energy there. Like there was a little bit like after my integrator departed, there was a little bit of like, okay, pull up those boots and there was energy there to like get this right. And I had an opportunity to right the ship. And, but I knew that, it's not going to happen overnight. So we just have to do this in phases. And I remember writing down like my whole, I don't know, decision tree. Like if this happens, I'm doing this. If this happens, I just made that decision so that
Right. The
like
engineer.
it's a lot easier for me whenever these things start to fall in place. So I remember you were in the decision tree, like, okay, if this happens, fractional integrator, when that, and then whenever, then we're going to go out and we're going to find we're going to find somebody full time. And I remember getting a recruiter and an executive recruiter. I remember you helping, Bill helping through the vetting as well. And but I think there was a little bit of like, oh, this is for real from the rest of the team, because you weren't letting things slide. And I forget, Bill, you were our implementer when Ben was there, I believe. For
Yes.
you.
Yeah.
You guys worked with me until April 2021 when you graduated. So I was there the entire time, and Ben, you were there for, I think, in October, or July. You were there, actually physically here.
You have good memory, Bill.
I know. I need those.
You have good record. You like know the exact rock completion
archives.
rate every quarter.
So,
yeah.
So I just remember there was a renewed energy to.
You wanted to take advantage of that energy.
Yeah.
Right? You wanted to make sure you capitalized on it, didn't revert back.
Yeah. And so now I felt like I had some professionals around me who had been there, done that, to help me, to be a soundboard and, just advise. And because I hadn't had that in the past. And I take ownership to that. I just, I didn't know what I didn't know. And I learned a lot in that process. So of getting the right people in the right seats, not just people that were smart, but people that fit the culture. And really, that was a time for me like, okay, it really does matter, the people that you're locking arms with. They are going to, whether they're 100% capable or not, if I can lock arms with these people and we can work well together, we can do a ton of work together. So, but it's never been perfect. I don't know about everyone else, but it has never been, I'm in a great season right now with our team. But there have been better and worse seasons. And it was tough several seasons there to try to get it right. But right now I'm in a good season, I can say.
Definitely would agree with you that if you have the right people, they're sitting in the right seats, then you could do anything else. You can fix those processes, streamline, document, train, revamp, pick a new strategy, execute on it. If you got the right people, if you're, as you said, locked arms with the right people. You mentioned being conflict avoidant. You mentioned issues, or you mentioned one of the things your fractional integrator brought was accountability and more rigor. So thinking about these right people, right seat issues, maybe conflict or lack of conflict, like what were some of the changes, or what were some of the things that you saw happen when your fractional integrator came on board that I guess what were some of the things that happened? Like, what happened during that engagement? We'll get to the next stage too, bringing in the long-term full-time integrator, but before that, like what was able to happen during the engagement?
For real, like when you were there for that 6 months, there was like, we are following the structure. We are going to have our L10s start on time, end on time. If you're not here, if you don't have your camera on, you're going to be called out. And before, there was no calling it out. I just remember many times, I wish this was happening. I wish this happened. And so that was one thing. Having tough conversations with some of the team members that were on the leadership team, that precipitated some change as well. But I think that was right after I had hired a full-time integrator. But you had started the ball to get rolling with, like, let's really find out if these people are the right person, the right seats. Let's have these quarterly conversations. And I remember you helping facilitate some of those. And I think that allowed some of the frustration to bubble to the top, which then, allowed for change to happen.
Right. Creates more short-term pain, but like we're really dealing with things that had been there before. Whereas before, maybe there was less pain because we weren't dealing with it, but we weren't dealing with it. So we were actually further from solution, even though there was less pain.
Yeah. So I think there was some growing up for me to do too, in that, in the role is like, it sucks to have these conversations, but you have to have these conversations.
Right.
it's just part of the job. And but having an integrator to do most of those is surely it frees me up to do what I do best. So
That's awesome. Bill, as the, you were the implementer, this was your inspiration, obviously, for this idea. Nate brought in a fractional integrator, like from the EOS implementer seat, right, outside the business. What was your perspective, right, on all of this? What happened? What did you see happen? I mean, you especially saw the sessions. I mean, we obviously talked offline as well, but like,
Right.
you saw the sessions, you saw the dynamic before, you saw the dynamic with the integrator that was fractional. So like, what's your side of this story? Like once we brought somebody in.
So what I saw was the equivalent of Rocket Fuel, the book. I mean, seriously, you and Nate all of a sudden working together, you started making significant gains in your journey to EOS mastery. You were following tools. You're getting your rock completion after you started. And since as long as I've been involved, you were hitting over 80% your rocks. You're hitting your numbers. So it's getting better and better, and that I think happened when you came on board, Ben, and EOS, and you knew how to have the hard conversations. You knew how to take the team forward. And I think that was the beginning of positive momentum for Nate and his team.
Mm-hmm. And what did you see? What difference did you see within the sessions themselves, not just in the results, but like what difference did you see in the sessions themselves with me versus with whatever was happening before? Because obviously I didn't even see that.
There were more open and honest communication in the sessions that I observed when you were there, and you started that. They tackled some very difficult issues during those quarterlies when you were there. And the conversation was a lot more open and honest.
Well, I mean, Nate, what happened when, like, what happened with, looking for the long-term solution, right? We're looking to get to your long-term full-time integrator. I recall that you picked a recruiter, and we started pretty shortly after I got there. I mean, we started that process almost right away because you had a full-time integrator before. This was not your first time bringing on a full-time person to run the business in the integrator seat. So what was the story from your perspective on getting to pass the baton to that long-term person?
So you guys were there to help with that. I think we had about 7 or 8 candidates that we interviewed, looking for somebody that had bigger shoes, had been there, done that. And that someone was somewhat local too. My previous integrator was down in the Northern Virginia area, and so it was kind of like almost an event to get together. Either I had to drive 2.5 hours, or this person had to travel up to us and stay overnight at hotels and stuff. So I was like, I don't want to have to make this event to like get together and see our eyes, So, and I know that can work great with lots of companies, but that was a preference of mine. And so looked for somebody semi-local who could, be in the office more often than not, that could have, could bring the team together if I wasn't there, move agenda items forward, buy into the L10s, buy into EOS. And so it was probably I would say it was probably a good 4-month process that we went through. And I think you were in on every interview that we had. And then I think that would have been like 2021 timeframe is whenever we had hired, and I'm positive it was like right at the beginning of the year, 2021. And Bill, you had stayed with us for maybe another 6 months, maybe?
So you brought the new integrator on in, I think, late December, early January, because he was the integrator and we had the annual in January, in January. And then I stayed for your next quarterly. And then you were 2 years in the journey, you graduated.
You graduated out, And so that integrator, so now I'm on my 3rd integrator, and that's okay. Most of these president CEOs, they don't tend to, I mean, I think the average is 3 to 4 years most. And so he was with me until about Thanksgiving of last year.
Mhm.
And we were able to promote somebody from within since then. And there was growth, plenty of growth during that time, pushing hard. We've tripled in revenue since the, I guess that was 2020 timeframe. This year's profit is, I mean, we're only halfway through, but it's going to be a bang up year so far. It has been incredible. Sales have been great. Revenue is very strong. Utilization is very strong, and profitability is so far so good. So it's been a great start. Just continue to fight for it is what I feel our job is, to fight for the culture, fight for the team, be a cheerleader. I kind of feel like that's become more of my role, is to be a cheerleader for the leadership team and to enable them and, get out of the way, let them do their work, let them do their job. So,
Well, and for those who don't know, I mean, utilization, right? If you have a consultancy type of business, you want to have the team member that's actually providing the billable service to clients is as highly utilized as possible from whatever their available hours are. And so you're saying that your utilization got up, profit got up, growth
yeah.
got up. I guess if you had to pick, like,
Visibility,
what are the main, what's
visibility, visibility really matured over the past year. Like, we have Power BI that we use for all of them. We have some systems that have been integrated. So we're able to track utilization and by individual, by project. And we didn't have that. And we didn't have those. We're still working on processes. I'm kind of embarrassed that it's taken us this long, but we're still working on it. But we surely have matured over the past 2 years. But now we have visibility to our numbers. I mean, it changes everything when you're like, when we have visibility and then we can share that visibility. We're not guessing, we're not hoping. It's like,
right?
that's the data and you can make decisions off of it. So.
Oh, that's awesome. And that's a first answer to what I was about to ask, which is, what are the main couple things that, drove that growth, that profitability, that utilization that you mentioned? And so one thing you mentioned is transparency. Is that something you had to invest a lot in? I mean, like, what was the process of
Well, I think we just got
creating
so
that
frustrated. We were just getting so frustrated with, like, you think you're making the right decision, and 3 months later, numbers aren't adding up, and there's a lot of like, I think this is what we should be doing, finger in the wind. Now we can almost, I hate to say predict, but we're able to make some really smart decisions based off of the data, when to hire somebody new, like when it's time to flip the switch.
Right. What percentage of utilization means, oh, we're capping out, we need to add to the team.
Bring somebody in so that they aren't going to burn out. And even like, well, when do you bring that person? Because if you're tapped out, like, to try to train somebody when these people are already tapped out, like, it's not fair to the person coming in, because they're just not going to get the time that they need. So even like getting to the point, okay, we're not at bright red, we're at orange, like, we need to flip the switch. And then also being able to look out to your you're probably gonna need to edit this. Looking out to your backlog, having your backlog is really important. Having good visibility in your backlog will let you know what you need to hire for the future. And so that's.
And when you say backlog, does that mean work that you already have that's not done, or you mean more
Correct.
like
Work that we
pipeline or
have,
future work
that we've won, we can see, okay, this is what
okay, right. It's just
2024.
contractually hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
Like, it's won, but it just, and we're not late. It just, but it's kind of like locked in, but hasn't
work
happened
one
yet.
that we need to fulfill for 2024, for 2025, 2026. And so knowing what your backlog is, not just like, well, that's our backlog. Well, what's happening this year? Like, what do I need to, what do I need to fulfill this year? So what labor do I need for this year? So whether I need to look at 1099 folks, and then eventually, okay, we're get to a threshold, we need to flip the switch to full time. So just having that data really, just having that data has been critical, and having processes and having the systems talk to each other.
What about data on pipeline? Because that also comes into staffing, right? You need to know, hey, if we've got, I don't know, 100 hours or $100,000 in the pipeline, we know our conversion rate is X. So that's going to mean
We've gotten
X
real
amount
good
of
on that as
work.
well. We've gotten really good. It's not a science necessarily, but we can get close. We use HubSpot, and we have a funnel. We have different stages in that funnel. We have different percentages of our win in that funnel. So once we get pretty far down the funnel of we have it called, final negotiation and commit, and then won or loss. So, but we have stages before then, that we've submitted a proposal, that we have a new lead. So as it comes down that funnel, or going left or right, the percentage of win gets higher. And so then we can say, okay, this is coming. It's not all, things happen the last second. Oh, sorry, funding fell through. We can't do that. Darn it. But so we have a couple pipelines, one for federal, one for commercial. And so having these systems talking to each other, again, we're not perfect at it yet, but it's come a long way. And then having people that are buying into, like, we need this. If we're going to scale, we need to have, and then also saying no. That's been another thing this year, is saying no. We have just kind of taken whatever has come to us many times, but saying no to industries we're just not quite familiar with, and also being selective with the work. That's been big as well. I hate it because I hate saying no to the work, but at the same time, you're saying yes to better opportunities. So,
what has been what for you is your biggest motivator in growing this business, and the work you've done with Bill from the last 5 years, and with, just in growing the business over the last 10 years? What's your main motivator? Like, is it more about like freedom from the day to day? Is it more of like just the feeling of accomplishment? What is it like? Freedom, eventual exit. Like, what's your main driver? Like what makes you passionate?
Yeah,
Want to wake up
I
in the
think
morning about this
accomplishment
business?
is a big word. Accomplishment is a big word. Yeah, for me, it's like, okay, we did this. We built a leadership team. We built a healthy leadership team. It's not a bunch of backstabbers. That's probably one of the most important things for me, is just to have a healthy leadership team. And so that's one layer of accomplishment.
And Nate, you want to add some of the benefits for you personally? Like, you published on LinkedIn maybe 3 or 4 months ago, where you guys were at a major trade show, and you're getting some type of certification, and your wife had planned a vacation, and you were able to go.
Yeah, that the freedoms. That's the layer of, hey, having a healthy team. Another layer is the freedom to say, hey, you having a leadership team that works really well together, then allows me to step back and say, they don't need me. And that's what I've heard. That's one of my goals, or one of my aspirations, is the less valuable I am to the company, the more valuable the company will be. And they may not want to hear that, but it allows them to work their magic. And so if I can, again, step to the side, be the cheerleader, still be the front man as far as like speaking and doing things like this, then that's I'm very comfortable and happy to do that kind of thing, and let them, play with numbers and deal with, staff, and so that's the other layer of like having that freedom. And that's going to happen again here next month, where I'm going to be going away for a little bit of time, or quite a bit of time. And they're all like, we don't even want you checking your email. Get out. And I would like to come back surprised. Like, how do we do, and not be like, not doing that on a daily or weekly basis, just coming back and like, okay, what's happened?
Or coming back to like 3 weeks of cleanup and catch up.
That's right. Well, that will be a disappointment, but I don't think that's going to happen. I've got a great team right now that's very confident in the work that they do. So that's one layer, and then the next layer is financial freedom, where after this, I'm not having to have to do something that I don't want to do, and be able to help other companies out with their, maybe whether it's through investing or just coaching, helping out other entrepreneurs, as well, and be able to show my battle scars and tell the story of each one of them. So but that's not going to be for a while. I'm enjoying what I'm doing, and we're going to keep at it. So,
Well, another element of financial freedom, I know, most people don't want to necessarily like live, go on yachts and just have like, oodles and oodles of money per se. What they really want is to be able to do the things for themselves and their families that they want to do without having to wonder whether they can afford it.
yeah,
But just to be able to do the things that they think would be good and beneficial and,
yeah.
just good for whatever reason, for their families and for themselves without having to worry or wonder, is the money there?
And the other layer is the client itself and helping that client out be better for the long haul, and not just coming in and doing triage and band-aids, but strategically long-term resiliency. We have some software that we've developed that has just taken off, and I don't know what to do with it right now. So I'm trying
The
to
same software when I was there. I remember there was
PowerStrux. It's really taken off, and we brought in a dedicated salesperson. We were exceeding all of our expectations so far, and clients love it. And it's one of our kind of one of our niches is just, and what we talk about all the time is providing our clients visibility. Like with visibility, you can make decisions. And there's a lot of this. There's a lot of people think it's magical for cybersecurity, or it's very mystical or whatever. But visibility, it can be done, and you can make really good decisions, and it can be you can accomplish what seems to be a very complicated endeavor.
So. Right, that's awesome. I mean, Bill, I guess let me ask you, what would you say are your main takeaways, I guess, from this experience working with a fractional integrator, your experience, what you've, just everything you've seen with SecureStrux and Nate. I guess what are your takeaways? What are your, what have you observed, your observations with this whole experience?
Well, I've seen Nate grow a lot. I've seen his team grow a lot. Nate's getting to the point where he's living the EOS life, right? Doing what you love, having more time to do that, making a huge difference for your clients and your team, being appropriately compensated, having that freedom and time for other passions to help other entrepreneurs, as you mentioned, Nate. It's been great and it started with you, Ben, coming on board. You started that whole momentum going, getting helping Nate turn the ship around and really move it where it is today. It's 3 times the size. Nate's got a great leadership team, and Nate and I connected at a Vistage networking event in late April, if you remember.
Yep.
And he's there with Mindy, his wife. And I remember asking you, and this is where I know you really let go of the vine. I asked Nate, hey, Nate, the 2025 EOS conference is in Washington. It's in your backyard next year. You and maybe 1 or 2 of your team members should go. And do you remember your response, Nate?
I don't, but I remember the conversation, but I don't remember what it.
It's like, well, I don't know. I've got to ask my integrator and my finance leader.
Oh, yes.
you were depending on them. I thought it was great.
I have learned that I get my hand slapped if I make too many big decisions here, or so I always bring those two into it because they're, I feel like I'm doing them a disservice if I'm going to start pulling the strings again. I want them to have that voice. And so
that was great. Well, for me, it's like you're letting go of the vine. That was wonderful.
But I would love to go. That's for sure. So, and I'll tell you, just having you two beside me has really helped as well. Like and I would say in general, having a peer group, having people that can coach you, having mentors that have been there, done that is so important. Like I remember early on, I just put my nose to the grindstone, and it's going to be all me, and I'm just going to shoulder it and push through, and and also being kind of scared to ask for help. And that that there's a lot with, someone else, you have to start somewhere. And I started as an engineer. I had no clue, but I had to act like I was a CEO. And I remember fumbling my way through just with that, can just, you have to edit this one too. What's that term? Just kind of faking it till you make it. And so having people around you that, hey, I made some of the same mistakes, and it's just part of the process. And that's where enjoy the process, because that's where it's not so much the end line, it's that process. If you ever run a marathon, it really is the run that you remember, not crossing the finish line, but all those little aches and pains and difficult miles that you remember, working through. So, but having a mentor and coach and folks that you can lean on, that you don't feel so isolated. So.
That's beautiful. Yeah. I mean, look, reflecting back, I mean, Nate, you're definitely inspiring to work with. As I hear from you now, the vulnerability that you show in this conversation, the growth mindset. I remember I had never read the book by Reed Hastings, No Rules Rules, that you were reading at the time, and you introduced me to it. So then I read it, and we had a lot of conversations about that, sort of like radical honesty and candor in our relationships professionally. And just all the growth that you showed and you were always pursuing. So that's certainly an inspiration to me. Obviously, anybody out there who's listening to or watching this needs help on cybersecurity. Definitely SecureStrux.com.
And if you've invented a password that got stolen, I can't help you there either. But yeah, if you're definitely in a defense space, manufacturing, somewhere adjacent, that's our sweet spot. So, but
and I would say for Bill also, I mean, working with you, I think you were my first EOS implementer, like to attend a session with after
cool.
JBS,
I didn't know that.
After Jonathan Smith. And so I appreciate that. I mean, I know you're a Colby certified coach. I don't remember if you were at the time or not, but I do remember that when we did I think we did the Colby session while I was with SecureStrux. We did that, when you're doing the EOS tools part of the agenda, and just the expertise and in-depth teaching that you had on Colby and using assessments and how to understand ourselves and how to understand each other using that particular assessment. I learned a huge amount from, and just from watching your facilitation, the way you IDS, it changed how I IDS in weekly meetings after that.
Wonderful.
And
thank you.
Yeah, no. So I still remember, I mean, 3 or 4 years ago, whenever that was, but but it was great. So anyway, pleasure and honor to know you and to see you at EOS conferences. And from time to time we run into each other.
Yeah, it's been great. Yeah.
Yeah, Bill is really good at getting to the root. Like, he doesn't let you off the hook with some cliche answer. He will keep pushing, and it's oftentimes where I remember we'd have the quiet person in the room would finally well, this is what I see as the problem. And so you kind of pull that out of you and get everyone to have that voice in getting to the root cause, but he doesn't let you off the hook with a simple answer. So that's one thing I did appreciate about you working with us.
Yeah, and, it's key to get to the real root, because you'll be spinning your wheels if you don't.
Yeah, and in general, I would just say, leaning into, as a CEO or integrator or a visionary, lean into the problem, lean into it. You're not going to learn. You're not going to get better if you're not leaning into some of that pain. It will drag on from quarter to quarter. I say that to cheer myself on too, because I still have a propensity to kind of all right, well, we got a little deeper. Maybe next time we'll get to the root. So.
Yeah, I would, one analogy I give, I forgot if I ever said this to you guys, where it was, one time we had some garbage cans on the side of our house where we'd take out the garbage every day. But, you know, whether it was animals or just like forks poking through the plastic, you know, garbage would escape, both liquid and solid, from the garbage bags. And over time, you know, the garbage bags would go in, the garbage men would take it out. And over time, over months, there would be something going on, taking up about a foot of the bottom of the garbage can, that kind of builds up over time. And they put the garbage cans in, put the garbage bags in, and every week it was fine. It didn't smell. It was fine. You know, because I wasn't dealing with it. It was like remained undisturbed at the bottom of the garbage can. And then one day I got some plastic gloves. I was like, okay, it's building up too much. I just can't anymore. I got some plastic gloves, and it is the process of cleaning that out or getting rid of it and getting it into garbage bag, you know, its own garbage bag afterwards, was indescribably horrible. And so you might think,
Good
like,
analogy.
okay, it got much worse. It got much dirtier
It
because
made
I
it
cleaned
worse.
it up. That made it much worse. Cleaning it made it worse. It's like, no, just like it just wasn't, the smell wasn't as noticeable because I wasn't dealing with it. It was just stuffed under a bunch of garbage.
Yeah.
But it's, you know, when we feel the pain, when we have the conflict, when we lose people and we have to backfill their work and find, you know, scramble to find somebody new and go through pain or have hard conversations and have people are angry and have fighting, like that's the garbage being stirred up.
Yeah.
And so it hurts a lot more. It feels like we're farther from a solution, but actually, because we're finally dealing with it, we just have to remind ourselves that we're actually closer to a solution now. We're closer to a better state, a garbage-free state, or at least able to deal with new garbage that will occur in the future. But anyway, that's sort of my
That's a great analogy. And I will say, if you have people on your leadership team who don't like the smell of it or don't like the collection of it, too, it makes it so much easier to clean that trash can. And you also have to be, let them know that will be held accountable. You're welcome the accountability
to yourself also.
To yourself. It's really important that you allow them to hold you accountable, you know, to keep that garbage can clean.
Yeah.
So.
Well, anyway, Nate, I appreciate you making the time for this extended conversation today. Bill, you too, and like coordinating. And I know there's a lot of schedule juggling that had to go on for today to be able to happen. So really appreciate this. My hope is that you guys sharing your story, other owners of businesses will be able to hear the story, see the ups and downs and the pretty and the not pretty. You know, that you went through, also see how the fractional integrator can kind of fit into the larger story, and, you know, where it could be a good use case. So I appreciate y'all sharing.
Yeah. Thank you both.
Thank you.
You both have been mentors and coaches to me. And I said before we got on here, I kind of feel like the patient, and you guys are one of you a family doctor and the other one's a surgeon. And you just helped me go through that process and gave me the courage to make some of the decisions I needed to make. So thank you both. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Nate. And everybody else, we'll see you on the other side. Thanks.
You're listening to Win-Win, an entrepreneurial community with your host, Ben Wolf.